Well, thank you, all of you, for joining us. I'm Dr. Sylvia Barron, and on behalf of the Board of Directors and Dr. Michael Conforti of the Assisi Institute, I would like to give you the warmest welcome on behalf of Muriel McMahon and Eduardo Carvalho, Butch Mercer, Jennifer Faddle, Christy Webb, and Nina Kelly. All of us are members of the Board of Directors of the Assisi Institute, the International Center for the Study of Archetypal Patterns. What I'd like to do first is let me welcome our colleagues in Spanish. I'm going to ask Anastasia to please welcome our participants in Russia, and Flora to welcome the participants in Italy. Así que primero que todo, quiero darles una gran bienvenida a todos de habla hispano. El brasilero, el portugués no lo puedo hacer, pero sí con una gran y cálida bienvenida a todos que están en Latinoamérica, los que están en España, los que están en cualquier parte del mundo de que estén, sepan que están bienvenidos a esta charla. Vamos a ser casi 1000 personas y ustedes son una gran parte de este programa. So Anastasia, if you would just please welcome, and I will unmute you. Yeah.
Добрый вечер, дорогие друзья. По просьбе доктора Сильвии Бернард я прошу вас всех чувствовать себя комфортно, добро пожаловать. Сейчас будет мероприятие, да, вы сейчас будете слушать доктора Майкла Конфорти и доктор Сильвия, и доктор Майкл, и все руководители Института Ассизи приветствуют вас здесь, на этом мероприятии. Добро пожаловать. Есть несколько моментов, да, здесь сейчас будут присутствовать люди со всех частей света. Есть несколько моментов, поскольку ожидается более чем около 1000 участников. Несколько минут назад была просьба, да, пожалуйста, вы будете с выключенными микрофонами слушать всю лекцию, но если у вас будут какие-то вопросы, пожалуйста, в конце приберегите их до конца лекции, а непосредственно в чат пишите, если у вас какие-то технические, да, сложности, технические моменты. Большое спасибо, что вы присоединились сегодня, добро пожаловать и хорошего нам всем вечера сегодня.
Спасибо. That's beautiful. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Flora?
Benvenuti a tutti in Italia, anche se adesso c'è il lockdown e sono dei momenti terribili. Non possiamo uscire di casa e quindi ritrovarci insieme è qualcosa che dà speranza oltre che gioia e cerca di uccidere la solitudine che c'è in tutti noi. Grazie per questa opportunità, grazie a Michael e grazie a Silvia. Coraggio.
Thank you.
Lo faremo.
Sì, sicuramente.
Andrà bene.
Okay. Flora, thank you. And 1 second, I need to mute Flora. Flora. All right. So before going on to Dr. Conforti's talk, there are 2 things I would like to do. The first is to orient you to what we're going to be doing today, how this is going to run so that everyone is comfortable. As I said, right now we're up to about 500 people and there are going to be 1,000 people. Therefore, it's really important that we know how to navigate this incredible happening, as it were. What we're going to be doing is none of you will be able to speak because I've muted all of you. At the end of Michael's talk, what I'm going to invite you to do, if you have a question or a comment, that you put it on the chat bar, and then I'll be able to unmute you. If we have to change that, it's just a way of making sure that we don't have a lot of people trying to speak at the same time. Those of you who will want to watch this again or perhaps share it with your friends, there are several ways that this is going to be disseminated. First of all, it's going to be on the Assisi webpage. And Butch, would you please be so kind as to put the address of the Assisi web page on the chat bar so that people can access it. It won't be available till after Monday. And for those of you, and I'll say this in Spanish as well, for those of you who speak Spanish, Russian, or Italian, the recording will be translated with subtitles. That won't be available for another week. However, it will be available again also through the webpage. So that's the orientation. And now let me just tell you some things. The fact that there are over 1,000 people registered for this talk says something about the hunger and the thirst that all of us around the world, the tribe of those of us who are so interested and so deeply engaged with the language of psyche, that somehow 1,000 of us have gathered today to hear Dr. Conforti. It's an amazing, as Flora said, we are in amazing times, and there's something that's moving in psyche that we seek to understand. So I have the great honor, truly, and the privilege of introducing to you Dr. Michael Conforti. Some of you know him and some of you do not. And this is the way I'd like to go about introducing him. And he doesn't have any idea that I'm about to say this, just so you know. When I was in graduate school, many years ago, what we learned is that facts are related to data and that truth is related to meaning. So I'm going to do two things this morning. For me, morning, for you, afternoon. First, I'm going to tell you some facts about Dr. Conforti, and then I'm going to tell you the truth about him. Here are the facts. Dr. Conforti is a Jungian analyst, Zurich trained. He's founder and director of the Assisi Institute, the International Center for the Study of Archetypal Patterns. You see how facts are kind of cold. I'm reading all of the accomplishments. This is all outer world data that tells you something about how Dr. Conforti has moved in the outer world. He's the author of 2 books. He's an international lecturer. He's founder, director, and mover behind the Archetypal Pattern Analyst certification, the Dream Pattern Analyst certification, programs around the world. Italy, Australia, Russia, Latin America, North America, South Africa. Look at some people from South Africa, Cyprus, from everywhere, right? Okay. He's a film and organizational consultant. His work over the last 40 years, although actually I think it's probably been his destiny since the moment that he was born, was to weave together and to study and to learn about the Jungian and the Freudian psychologies, bringing them together along with quantum physics, field theory, the new sciences, chaos theories, and more facts. They're out there. But all of this has been in the service of the truth. All of this work that Michael has done over his lifetime has been for one thing and one thing only, and that is to listen to and to discern the truth and the meaning that psyche is constantly revealing through the marriage of the movement of psyche through matter. And the truth that many of you who know Michael know is that Michael approaches psyche with great wonder, and not only wonder in terms of awe, but wonder in terms of a deep and abiding curiosity to know and to learn and to understand. He approaches psyche with great respect. And also, as all of us who know Michael, Dr. Conforti, is he approaches psyche with a great sense and knowledge of humility. He's looked unflinchingly into the marriage of psyche and matter, into understanding nature's patterns, how to read the objective truth of an archetypal reality that we live. Michael knows the reality of psyche, the purposeful movement of psyche. And what you will hear today from Dr. Michael Conforti is a profound look at the archetypal meaning of the coronavirus, presented by a scholar who is deeply in love with the spirit of the depths, and who offers it to us at this time of great personal and collective need and desire for understanding. So Dr. Michael Comforti.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a beautiful introduction. And I want to thank the people that helped make this together. You know, what was it? Hillary Clinton said many years ago, it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, similar to what's going on in the world today, where people are coming together, communities, families. So too in the CC community. Many people have been up for hours doing the slides, the technology with this. Sylvia preparing her presentation, part of this in different languages. Flora, all of you, thank you. Anastasia in Russian. And to me, it's a very touching moment to see that somehow that for many reasons, everybody's brought together from all the different states here, from different countries, Bulgaria. I mean, it's just, it shakes you. It shakes you in a lot of really, very meaningful ways. And seeing people I've known 20, 30 years ago coming back, Bill and Rich Anastasia and Susan McClure, people I've known, and my colleagues from Italy, my good friends, family in Italy. So I want to thank all of you. And today, this is a challenging presentation because let's begin where we need to begin with this. The world is being ravaged by something that we don't really know what it is, by something that knows no boundaries. And Flora, who's from Milano, and Massimo, and others that are from northern Italy, you guys are part of the epicenter where this is really hitting. You know, my family is from the south and is not as pervasive. And Flora and I talk sometimes 3-4 times a week, and she'd be keeping me abreast of the horrors of what's going on. And again, I feel terrible for all of you going through it. And now it's hitting New York and other parts of the state. Sylvia, where she is in Washington, it's the epicenter in America, the state of Washington. So, number one, I'm sure we all share a sense of I don't want to say terror, but sadness for this, and we pray that it's going to end soon, and we're going to get through it. And this is not only, I mean, we get health issues, number one. The other part of it that is huge is the financial. And some people will not come out of this okay. While there are politicians, saying all these wonderful things, it's going to be great, Easter time is going to be great. Well, let's hope to God that's true. But there are some people, a lot of people have been laid off. I just heard that Marriott, the hotel chain in America, they just furloughed 10,000 people the other day. And Christy Webb, she's on the call. She's the director of ethics, and she told me something wonderful. She said what she and her family does down in North Carolina is the restaurants that they love, they're going to buy gift certificates to support the restaurant. I love it. It's a beautiful thought, something I hadn't thought about. And I want to do the same. So I offer that as a preamble because this talk is not about sanitizing, deodorizing, and all the things. I mean, in a good way, all the things we do to protect ourselves. We got to close the doors. We close the windows. We keep the strangers away from us. We barricade as much as we can. We isolate. However, what this talk is about, and there are people that can talk about that in very meaningful ways, people that know the medical parts of this and all the precaution, that's not my specialty. I won't even touch that because you have people that are helping with that. What I want to attempt to address is what may be the symbolic meaning of this. And I'm not going to try to say the symbol of the virus is X and Y. I mean, that's a lot of hypothesis, it could be accurate, could not be accurate. But I think what is accurate is the fact that we are all locking our doors right now as we need to. The idea of locking the door is an archetypal theme we've seen in fairy tales and myths since the beginning of time. And that's what my talk is oriented around. And the synchronicity, I almost don't believe it. I'm going to be presenting a little bit about the three little piggies today, because it really is. I mean, this is not about fun. It's a profound story of what we do about that which is knocking on the door threatening. I'm on a call earlier today, and a wolf, I've never seen a wolf so big in my life, walks by the window of my backyard. So there's something really constellated. This thing had to be an 80-pound or 70-pound wolf, as big as the one in the Three Little Piggies story. So let me say a few more things about the outer world situation. one of the things that I think is so terrifying about this virus is that we have no known healthy response to it. I mean, we're in a state where the immunological system cannot really respond adequately and appropriately. I mean, we always have our responses. If you're cooking a meal, we know what to do. If it's too much salt, too much this, if our children, they get sick, there are certain things we know what to do, and there's comfort in that. Even when it's, we all know what it's like when your kid gets a horrible temperature or something really big happens and you get terrified, but there's a doctor to call, there's help, there's antibiotics. We don't have that right now. And in many ways, I think it's that fear of not knowing where to turn that creates even more outer world terror for us. And outer world, but it affects us internally. So the other part of this is that so many of the things that have brought us comfort are not there right now. I know some of you are with friends right now. I know Esmeralda and Doris, other people together down in Florida. They get together, have meals, and they could drink together. Many of us can't do that right now. I mean, in my culture growing up, you always had 20, 30 people for dinner. I know Flora, Massimo, you always have your Sunday dinner with all the kids there and your mother and your brother and whomever. The sound of wine glasses clinking and then preparing the meal and come on, let's go help make the dinner and make the pasta and all that. And you sit around the table and you talk and you tell stories. There's a beautiful comfort in that we have been denied right now. And we stumble in isolation. And I'm sure we'll find a way. This is going to be temporary, for many of us, and we'll find a way back out. But there's still a lesson in this. And some people have joked around saying all this isolation is really wonderful for the introverts of the world because they say, now, this is how we live anyway. But for the rest of the world, it's really forced isolation. It doesn't feel so good. But the point here I'm getting at is, we're brought to our knees because the things that bring us comfort and stability are not there. And also, in some ways, I'm sure people feel a little bit betrayed by the body because the body doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know how to respond. There's no vaccine. Remember, the vaccine provides what they call passive immunity. The body develops a memory of passive immunity. You get the vaccine, the flu, the pneumonia vaccine, and the body remembers what happens when the virus does hit us. So we don't have that. The other thing we are finding right now, which is really, I think the good part of this, is resilience. And again, Flora and Massimo and other colleagues in Italy has been the leader in this. But we saw all those videos on YouTube and Facebook of all the people singing from the balconies. Good voice, operatic voices, who can sing, who can't sing, it doesn't matter. They get out there and they sing. Because it's that hunger to be connected, a hunger for community that we have. And the world is sharing that right now. And in many ways, I think the Italians have taught us that you don't give up and you don't, even if you're isolated, you still got people around you. You reach out on your balcony. I saw that one guy playing the piano on the balcony. It's so moving. That somehow, and this is some stuff we're getting into today, Elie Wiesel and Primo Levi and some people that know real horror, they never gave up. And that's a mystery. And this is not the same, obviously, as Holocaust. And I would never try to compare anything to Holocaust, but it is devastating. And people are still finding a way to come together. Now, one of the ways I like to begin is by reading a piece from one of my favorite authors. And some of you know the work of Rabbi Heschel, Abraham Heschel, and actually Susanna Heschel, his daughter, gave a wonderful presentation for our group a while ago. And while in no way is this piece meant to ever minimize the tragedy, it does provide some hope. And it's in the book called I Ask for Wonder. It's a beautiful book, I Ask for Wonder. And it's called Heavy with Wonder. And it's a very short piece. And he writes, to become aware of the ineffable is to part company with words. The tangent to the curve of human experience lies beyond the limits of language. The world of things we perceive is but a veil. Its flutter is music, its ornament science. But what it conceals is inscrutable. Its silence remains unbroken. No words can carry it away. Sometimes we wish the world would cry and tell us about that which made it pregnant with fear-filling grandeur. Sometimes we wish our own heart would speak of that which made it heavy with wonder. And in many ways, this talk is about the wondering, what are we having to learn right now? And what do we have to face that we may not be facing? And that's part of the wonder of his work. Now, why this presentation? I mean, why right now? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious why right now, okay? But why did I feel as though I wanted to give this presentation? And I want to thank a lot of my colleagues. We have a Wednesday supervision group. We've been doing it for about 5 years, where for the past year I've been speaking about two themes. One is called the Ravages of Denial, and the other one is the Migration of Forgotten Contents, okay? The Ravages of Denial and the Migration of Forgotten Contents. And this work is really inspired by, we're going to see some slides later, some of the pictures of these pioneers of the work of Freud, Jung, Elie Wiesel, Anne Ulanoff, Anna Freud, Robert Langs, and these are people that really had the courage to talk about some of the more painful aspects of life in the psyche. You know, and it's not that this is a talk about darkness and misery. I mean, we know enough of that that's going on, but there's another piece that I really hope to get to today.
Michael, may I interrupt you for a second before you get to that piece? Because I'm getting a lot of people saying that there's something wrong with the sound. I'm wondering if you're able to check your mic, that it might be too high.
Too high? Let me lower it. Is it any better now? Because this is a whole new system. I just got this the other day.
Okay, great.
Any better now?
Excellent.
Some people say they hear fine. Mine works perfect.
Right, right.
That's
Okay,
right.
I think that I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that you do. So what we're going to do is whatever sound you have, it's probably on your end and that we can't do anything more about it. So just know that the recording is going to be clear. So thank you so much for letting me know that it's good. And I think you're fine, Michael.
If
Yes.
it's not loud enough, just, let us know, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the Ravages of Denial. What's it about? There's only so much a personality can take in. And there is, let's say another hard truth here. I think it's the truth. There is a fragility to the human psyche, even though there's resilience, and we thank God for the resilience in life. Thank God that we're able to come out of some rough times and make a life and move forward. When it comes to psychological pieces, just follow the history of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. Much of the work has been about what happens when these contents are pressed down further and further back into the unconscious. And in many ways, psychoanalysis and psychotherapy really has been a study of the migratory patterns of repressed contents. Now, look, we know that there's creativity and all the wonderful things that can happen, all the new growth, the art. Well, a lot of that art and creativity will be compromised and confined by the degree to which contents in the unconscious are repressed. Because think of it as an energetic system. It's like a thermodynamic system where you got energy pushing down and pushing down, pushing down, and more energy is recruited to that repression, leaving less energy for the expansion in the personality. Now, let me tell you the big piece for me. I've been practicing for 40 years, right? I've seen so many wonderful people. Of course, our own life too, right? My own life and people I love. But as an analyst, people that you respect, people you really care about, right? People that are great hearts and with many resources in the arts and in all different fields. That you see their lives get compromised. You say, why? What is it? What is it you're doing? Why would you have to end up repeating this trauma time and time again in relationships? I mean, my colleagues in Russia was telling me that Anastasia, and others, I think divorce rates are 80% in Russia right now, 70 to 80%. Well, something is working or not working. In America, 60% divorce rates. That says a lot. How many people struggle? How many people say, I just really can't find my bearings in the world. I don't know what I really want to do with my life. Or I know what I want to do. I just can't seem to make it. I keep on stumbling. if you really dig in, you find a lot of those stumblings are really the results of unconscious dynamics, keeping you tethered to something that keeps you constrained. And most times what keeps us tethered are the contents that we have been repressing. And what we do, and this is the parallel to what's going on with the virus, and this is my motivation to give you a talk now. In the way we are barricading ourselves against the enemy, the disease, the illness, all the people that may keep be carrying it, maybe the paper boy, the pizza delivery person, whatever, they're all carrying the virus, and we got to keep it outside. How many of the images you're going to see? We get some wonderful slides we're going to show in a little bit. How many of the images are about lock the door, man? Hey, Bill, lock the door. You're down in Jersey, lock the door. You don't go too close to Newark. You know what happens? Those of you in Brooklyn, lock the door in Brooklyn. You know, you go to Palermo, where my people are from, you better lock the door. It's not too safe over there. And we lock the door. And what we do is we find that whether it's disease or fear or whatever, it's the enemy, it's all out there. It's Eric Neumann, one of the greatest Jungians, one of the most original Jungians that ever lived, who wrote a book in response to the atrocities of the Holocaust. Back in 1940, I think 45, he published this book called Depth Psychology, The New Ethic. When he talked about the world situation, he said, you know, let me read a piece here of what he said. This is on page 19 in the preface, okay, on Depth Psychology and New Ethic. He writes, the nations which only yesterday were proclaiming their solidarity in the battle for the freedom of mankind are now competing against each other in the production of atomic bombs. And who can doubt that the unthinkable of today will be the commonplace of tomorrow? What is the point in a world situation such as this of the ridiculous ethical questions and the still more ridiculous answer? It all depends on the individual. And then it goes on to write, the shadow side of the human race towers over us all, darkening the sky with its death rays and its atom bombers. Yet the little creature, though always almost annihilated by the big battalions, always manages to survive, and David always triumphs over Goliath. It is a little creature that is the bearer of the divine miracle. For this little creature is nothing less than a creative individual, and it is under his guidance or her guidance that the human race makes progress on its journey through history. However, he goes on to say, while that is true, I mean, the resilience, the courage, the individual that we'll triumph over this COVID-19, we'll make it, we'll get some of the economy back. He says, where we falter, though, and this is the key to his work, is we maintain what he terms the old ethic. The old ethic says, you know what? It's the enemy out there. It's the Germans, it's the Jews, it's the Italians, it's the Russians, it's the whomever it is. We find the person out there, the group out there, the country out there, and we will attribute to them all the evil that we want to avoid. And he goes on to say in this book, which is really a major motivation for my work in his presentation, he says, the war machine is propagated by projection. The war machine is propagated by projection. And look, let's be real again, right? Look, war seems to be an inevitability in life, okay? Thank God we were able to free the people in the camps. Thank God it happened. Thank God the Russians, unsung heroes were the Russians and what they did. Your country, Anastasia. In America, many of us don't know. I have been learning by my contacts with Russians of both the tremendous loss of lives and the tremendous courage exhibited by the Russian people to save and their role in freeing the captives of the camps. But he goes on, so here we got all this potential in the human condition. He said, however, it's the fragility of the human psyche and the fragility of the personality that falters when it comes to accepting responsibility and stopping the projection-making dynamics that go on in the human psyche. Now, projections are what? Projections are you see out there everything you don't like. You know? It's the arrogant one over there. It's the pig-headed one over there. Oh my God, they're a bunch of thieves, those people. You better watch it. They're thieves. Now remember, there's that in the Hasidic story, but the young man says to his father-in-law, said, there's a great rabbi coming, and I want to learn from him. What's he going to teach? About the commandments. Well, we all know the commandments, says the old man. He said, but this guy apparently is different. He's a great rabbi. And the boy goes, he spends his money, does a 2-day journey to get there. Then he comes back. And the father says, okay, so what, my son, have you learned? Well, we worked on the commandment, thou shalt not steal. He says, oh, my son, of all the commandments, that's the easiest. We don't steal from anybody. And the son said, yes, Father, I know. We did talk about thou shalt not steal from anybody. But the rabbi also went on to say, we don't steal from anybody. And also, thou shalt not steal from thyself. In this proclivity and proliferation of the projection-making dynamics in the psyche, we steal from ourselves every day. Because we take the contents that are potentially generative, potentially transformative, and they continue to be projected out into the world. And the next piece that happens with this is when we project, one of the other great losses is about memory. Because as we project, we exile, which is much of Dr. Barron's work on the archetype of exile. We exile these contents that belong to us, and with them go our memories. Let me give you a couple of quotes on memory, and then I want to show these slides, Butch, in about another minute after this little piece, okay? Elie Wiesel says that forgetfulness for him is the death not only of memory, but also of imagination. Powerful. He says that forgetfulness was not only the death, but also the loss of imagination. And then he goes on to say, and what do you take care of? He asked. What people throw away, what history rejects, what memory denies. The smile of a starving child, the years of its dying mother, the silent prayers of the condemned man and the cries of his friends. I gather them up and preserve them. In this city, I am memory. And then finally, there was a wonderful book in a conversation between Francois Mitterrand, the former president of France, and Wiesel. And Mitterrand says to Wiesel the following. Elie Wiesel, you have a burden of memory different from mine because you were uprooted from your birthplace. You lived a life of exile, finding a new home in a new land, exile from your childhood and exile from your memories. But Wiesel said, but I never lost my memories. It's something I would never give up. So now as we begin turning to the images and to the sense of all that we try to exile, we have a series of images that one of our colleagues, Dara put together. And Butch, can we show those right now, please? And I'll give a very brief commentary on them. Okay, these people are really the leaders. From Robert Lang, some of you know his work, Anna Freud, Eric Neumann, Ann Ulanoff, which was probably one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life, a Jungian analyst out of New York, Anna Freud. And these are all people that had the courage to look at psyche, look at the contents of the unconscious, and the word that you use, Sylvia, unflinchingly. They talked about the ontology, they talked about shadow, and remember, Jung was really the first to talk about the archetype of evil. And he talked about the eruptions from the dark unconscious that has affected mankind and humankind from the beginning. Okay, Butch? Okay, now here, this is the image, and Sarah, one of our graduates, and she's doing some teaching, she came up with this image, which is so powerful, because they said, what I really want to talk about is how we try to lock away, and all the energy we put into locking away the content of the unconscious. And this is a phenomenal image to do it. And this is now going to be repeated throughout, okay? Butch? Okay, Butch, can you get the next image? Okay, now this is incredible. Dara found this image and she didn't realize at first. It's a pipistrelle. You see it? There's a bat up on top. Now, this is a gate at a cemetery in France. Now, what are they saying is the cause of this virus right now? It's the bat, right? So here we see again, even with death, is the gate meant to keep in or to keep out? But the point is, there's something about keeping things away. Okay, next image. Okay. Now this is the image of the virus. And they say under a microscope, this is a facsimile, but this is basically the structure of what the virus looks like right now, which again is unprecedented for humanity, for the medical science. Okay, Butch? Okay. Now, Dara thought of using this image as one or two images of the West Coast. This is San Francisco. Where are the people? You know, if you watch some of the movies that are out about zombies right now, everything is deserted. And everybody's locked away in a home, praying and hoping to God this thing is going to end so they can come back out into the streets, back into life. This is desolation. Okay, Butch? Now we're getting to part of the psychological part of this. Again, for good reasons, we are sanitizing and doing everything we can. Washing hands and washing even packages that arrive in the mail. Now remember, as a Jungian, as somebody studying archetypal dynamics, what we study are historical precedents. Do we know anything about this image? Well, it's washing your hands, or it's getting clean. Well, okay. Yes. This is an archetypal image. And what you try to do with this work, when you amplify an image, which is some of the beauty of what Jung and the early Jungians spoke of, especially von Franz and Esther Harding and some of the greats. They said, where have we seen this image before? In what different cultures? In what situation? What is it expressing? You see, what happens is we get involved in temporal activities, marriage, raising children, being grandparents, now defending against illness, washing hands, and you realize, while for us it may be new, and as many of the old timers would say, thank God America hasn't known this before, but now we do. Many parts of Europe has known about this, has known about the plague and pestilence and all. But we have known through history, the history of the psyche, we've known about hand washing. Now look what happens next. Hey, Butch? Okay. This is Lady Macbeth. Out, damn, spot out. I don't have to read it. You can read it yourself, okay? This is Lady Macbeth. Remember after they killed King Duncan in the story? She said, blood, what blood? I've never seen such blood. I never knew one could have such blood. And she is trying to wash her hands of the stain. We always try to clean ourselves of the stain. Cain didn't know what to do with the stain until he realized it was God's way of protecting him. There's no protection in this stain. But what happens is when there's a stain of a psychic content, and we can talk that way, because look, there are things that stain our lives. There are things that have been tragedies that have been done to us and that we've done to others that will mark us. They say, yes, we've got to live with this. We've got to find some way to carry this with us in life, things we've done. And much of what this presentation is about is how do we live with it and how do we try to explicate and how do we try to avoid it? These are stories right now. While hand washing is necessary right now, I mean, you can't even buy soap anymore in the market. You can't buy hand sanitizers anymore, right? I think Lady Macbeth was looking for hand sanitizers. If they would have had hand sanitizers back then, it would have been a killing, right? So anyway, look at her eyes. And if you ever want to see I think it's the original Macbeth, Orson Welles did a version of this. It's incredibly grainy, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant in his portrayal of what they're living with. Now, why this is especially appropriate? It's the guilt. Come on, I mean, if people are real, if we're real with ourselves, there are things that we've done in our life that we have remorse over. But remorse is much more sophisticated response. That often comes after a fair amount of analysis and self-analysis and maybe prayer. before it becomes remorse, you know what it is most times? It's guilt. And guilt is what ravages a life. And I'll tell you, I've seen too many examples of this. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Next, please. Now, this is a powerful image. Okay. Okay, this is the image of Pontius Pilate. Remember, he was asked. Okay. Okay. He washed his hands when he was asked, will you make a verdict? Okay. If people are saying make more comments later, and show the slides first. Okay. So go ahead. Okay. Next, Butch. Okay. So we're just going to show the slide, then I'll give more commentaries to go on later. This is a compelling image. Okay. Okay, Butch. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Now this is powerful. Okay. Okay. Now comes the next part of this. Okay. Okay, Butch. Now look, this is self-evident. This is something no one wants to really look at. Okay, Butch, we'll just go through these images, then I'll get back to the presentation. Okay. Yeah, we can't see it because the thing's on the side. Okay. Now it's interesting. Let me pause 1 second, Butch, because some people want the commentaries now, some people don't. So, you know, what I'll do is I'll make very light commentaries now and talk later about it. Because these images are really the, they present what my theme is about. I'm going to be talking about it much more in depth. Okay. 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 Next, Butch. Okay. Enough said, right? I mean, how this is really what so many people are living with right now. The Grim Reaper knocking on our doors. But remember, just to make this one point, all these images of being locked away and things coming to the door and things we're protecting ourselves from are symbolic of what we do with these unconscious contents. That's the point of this presentation. Of all the contents that we leave out the door, a la Eric Neumann and the old ethic, it's the enemy out there. Keep it the hell away from my life. It doesn't work, though. It doesn't work. Okay? Okay, Butch? Now, we're going to talk about this story a little bit later. And you may think it's trying to add something frivolous to a profound issue. It's not frivolous at all. It's really when you really work to understand the story, it's a brilliant portrayal of what you do with the fear at the door of what you try to keep out. Okay? And you see in that there are 3 different houses. And we had a couple of stories in a seminar about this, 2 sessions already, about the difference between the house made of sticks, the house made of straw, and the house made of stone, of brick. Okay. Now, look, these are terrifying images. I mean, the wolf wants to get in. Psychologically, it's the contents from the unconscious that want to get in. And it's not about the unconscious wants to hurt us. It's not that. And you're going to see when I talk about Neumann's work, why these images become so terrifying. Okay, Butch? I mean, these are rough images. I mean, these are nightmares. Okay? And we can make these slides available, Butch and Darren's people, because some people are saying, could you show them a little more slowly? Okay. Okay, I need to say a word about this right now. When I first came back to this story of the 3 little piggies, I thought, okay, the wolf at the door, it's the terror at the door. And when I read it over, I realized they wanted to kill the thing at the end, right? They wanted to kill the wolf. I said, I can't use the story. And then I reread it and I realized they said, we're going to catch the wolf and we're going to eat him. Now, please, this is not about killing animals. It's not about this. It's all about psychic reality. And I'm not even going to talk right now about the symbol of the wolf. I mean, one of our faculty, Katrina Messenger, did a wonderful job on the wolf symbolism. It's about contents and what we do with them. The eating here is about assimilation. It's not about destroying. And that was my fear when I first said, I can't use the story because they're trying to just kill off that which they're afraid of. That's the old ethic that Neumann's talking about. Okay, next, Butch. Oh my God, yeah, these are the zombies. You know, remember George Romero's Night of the Living Dead? Yeah. And this is, I mean, look, I hope the point's coming clear. What these images represent are what happens when we are terrified and we try to protect ourselves from the contents from the unconscious that are trying to come in. And this is not trying to say all the contents are destructive. Even some of the most creative things that come in to make a change in your life, they could be terrifying because they're asking for you to change your orientation. Someone just wrote the cauldron of transformation. That's exactly the point. It's perfect. I mean, take when we get older. I mean, you know, the psyche's hitting the door really hard for me, saying, you got to change your orientation towards life. Like, you know, you're looking at 70 years old and you kind of go kicking and screaming into the older years. So it's something very creative coming in, but it still threatens the identity we've had. And again, Neumann makes a brilliant point to articulate why they become frightening and terrifying images. Okay, Butch? Now, you all remember this, right? Jack Nicholson from The Shining. A great image. Margaret selected the border here. And right, isn't it incredible in the world today with so much about walls and borders and people being exiled, and people trying to come into different countries and being pushed away? I mean, this is a huge archetypal issue in the world. And it's capturing, again, it's capturing the inner situation for humanity. Okay? Now, this is especially interesting. One of our students, graduates, did a brilliant presentation on Medusa. Now, I'm ashamed to say I thought Perseus and Athena were heroes in the story. I didn't realize that Medusa was punished because she was a beautiful woman, that she was punished by Athena. And Perseus was really a pawn of a destructive process. Athena was a woman done terribly to. You find better English for that, but she was hurt terribly by what they did, and they made her a beautiful, powerful woman. They made her into a monster. They made her appear as a monster, made people believe she was a monster. Okay? Butch? Okay, now, as I'm saying, it's not always terrible, bad thing. In the Epiphany, in the Garden of Gethsemane, many times when you read the story, you see images. It's the illumination of Jesus in the story that is so powerful, similar to the terror of looking at Medusa. This is not the terror, it's the light is so bright, one has to shield themselves from seeing it. Because the power of seeing the self, seeing something as powerful as the image of Christ, and this is not about religious presentation, okay? It's powerful with religious imagery and iconography. But some things are that powerful to look at. You know, at times we have to shield ourselves. Okay, next. Okay, now this is the movie we're going to talk about, Bird Box. I'll just say one thing right now. There was a brilliant theme in this movie, and we spent a number of weeks in our seminar talking about it. While it may be about motherhood, people say that's part of the storyline, that she was the redemptive qualities of a mother, because she was sort of cold at the beginning, and then she became a wonderful mother. Part of the story is, like, for our times, especially for our times, there are things you can't look at. And do you realize psychologically how much we go into the world like this and all the things we don't look at? And we're going to see images towards the end of when she found the sanctuary. And what's interesting is in the sanctuary, they were all blind. They were blind. There were a handful of people that could see, but they were blind. And it's the wisdom of inner sight that was redemptive in the story. And this is very much the analytic process. I mean, how many people don't want to look? And I'm going to come back to Freud for 1 second. Remember what Freud said? Two major things about when we close our eyes like this, because we're afraid that there are things that can destroy us if we look at them. He said, however, we repeat what we don't want to remember. And the other thing he said is the return of the repressed. You can cover your eyes, do whatever you want, but it's going to come back to you. And those of us that practice therapy and analysis, you realize there are times timing is huge in this. Times put the blindfolds on, close the shades, close the drapes, man. It's too much to see. The violence of a child seeing too much. The people that have gone through terrible traumas in their own life. Sometimes you got to close your eyes for a while. Okay, Butch? Now we're coming to redemption. What these next images are about is when we begin to turn our gaze towards that which we couldn't see before. This is a powerful story. And remember, he says at this point, he says, who is that beautiful youth? Am I to woo you or you to woo me? And he reaches down to grasp and to hug the beautiful person he sees. He doesn't know who it is, and he drowns. It's a story of somebody that could never see themselves. And the tragedy of that. His life in many ways was tragic. And you go to the birth, he was conceived in violence. His mother was raped. And it was Jung that said neurosis begins in the womb. To use our language, the field begins at the time of conception. And, so was this redemption him at the end? It was the beginning. There was an attempt for the first time of seeing something he'd never seen, never knew he was a beautiful person. But he couldn't take it the next level. Okay, next image, Butch. Okay, now this is another very powerful story. Orpheus and Eurydice. I'm sure many of you know this story, but what this captures is him facing the reality that which he most loved he could not have. Hades had played a trick on him. And I gave a lecture in Italy on this many years ago, and I called this the grand deception. When Hades said, you can have her back. You can really have her back if you don't turn around when she's following you out of Hades. Now look, let's again come home with this for a minute. How do you ever consciously, and that's the key word, how do you consciously look at such things in your life as we age and say, you know what, there are some opportunities I may not have anymore because of the traumas in one's life. The American dream, I think more than many other countries, because we're young, everything's possible. There's still a happy dream, a happy ending. It's not always a happy ending. The people that can carry the wounds with them and say, yes, a piece of life can be closed off and there's still many possibilities, it develops a tremendous character. So how does he live like this? It's both the woman out there that he loves, it's also the anima that he was estranged from. But he knew he loved her, and that may be the transformative piece for him. Okay, next please, Butch. This is redemption. Remember the story? Jason the Argonauts, when the sirens were calling, and they were promising any and every satisfying desire they ever had. They would satisfy everything. The mariners, they felt they could not deal with this, so they put the beeswax in the ear, so they wouldn't hear the sounds of the sirens calling and beckoning. A colleague reminded me of this 10 years ago. He said, Mike, but do you realize what happened to Odysseus? I said, no. They said, they tied him to the mast with no beeswax. He had to listen to the call of the sirens. In the same way, Orpheus had to look. You see what this is about? This is the act of consciousness developing in the psyche where you need to have, in this instant, receptivity and restraint to be able to see what's calling. It may be the addiction in your life. It may be whatever addiction, to drugs, to alcohol, to pornography, to gambling, whatever. You know it's calling. It may be the addiction to getting you back into something that could eat you alive. To begin to understand what is symbolically calling you. Reflection brings discernment. Discernment brings the opportunity for transformation. And this is a perfect image to capture it. So Dara, thank you for this image so much. And you know, look, the sirens also often represent the complexes. The complexes, those unconscious contents that are calling us and offering us what looks like gold. If only you come back and you get back into the gambling, you get back into whatever the addiction is. You find yourself enthralled again by that relationship. Oh my God, this is it. This is incredible. Only to find yourself going back down the same tunnel you've been before. You know what? I had the good fortune to have a mentor for 30 years of my life. And I'll tell you, he saved my hide. I'll tell you right now, I'm not ashamed to say he saved my hide by helping to identify some of the sirens in my life, helping to help me find the way to the mast. And again, the image, restraint and receptivity. Okay, next, Butch, please. This is something many people are terrified of, if you really think about it. If you get 80% divorce rates, 60% divorce rates, this is what you don't want to have. Because this kind of love brings you to your knees to realize the vulnerability that comes if you care that deeply about anybody and let anybody see you that deeply, and you go to your bed at night and you know you're safe. We're terrified of this. Well, of course, we all want it. Of course, we want it, but you're terrified. If we weren't, we would have a different approach to relationships. Okay, next, Butch. The transformation at the door. And as we're saying here, and Butch came up with this as a great image, that while we want to think many times that that which is coming to the door is going to destroy us, it is potentially transformative. And look what happened in this movie, right? They were all terrified and opened the door, and look what came to them. And Jung talked about flying saucers, you know, and he said the flying saucers, he said, I don't know if they're real. I'm not concerned if they're real or not. He said, I'm concerned that humanity has images of flying saucers from the beginning of time representing contents with something from another domain in the psyche. So something opens up, something luminous opens up here. Okay? Now, Dara wanted this image because she said it's one of the first times we see LA being out of a fog, whether the smoke from the fires or fog. And sometimes it clears, like what's going to happen in Europe and in America. This thing is going to clear eventually. And as long as we can take away the central message to this about what's been knocking on the door. Okay, Butch, only a couple more. I'm going to go back to the presentation. Okay. Okay, now we've always needed to protect ourselves. Every humanly created system, every man-made system has as a central feature a protective wall. Analysis. You have the magic, you have the temenos. Look at the body, look at how we're born. We're born within the protective shielding of the mother's womb. Every cellular structure has a membrane around it that protects the nucleus. Damage happens to the cell when the nucleus is broken, when there's an injury to the protective membrane. In analysis, in therapy, a lot happened in therapy, sometimes not for the best, when there are breaks in the therapeutic relationship, when they're framed, break in the regularity of treatment. So we begin to find that the image of the temenos is not created by Freud or Langs or Jung. It's been with humanity from the beginning of time. So you have a biological model which is played out in the outer world as well. It's survival. Okay, next image. Okay. This is when you talk about survival and safety. This is when in the movie Bird Box, she makes her way, blindfolded with her kids. She makes this perilous journey in the boat downriver, and they find salvation. And we only find out later on that most of the people in this place, they're blind. And blind, as we know from the great mythic figure, actually, I don't know how to pronounce his name, the wise old man that was blind, the power of inner vision, which may be the clue to the story. Okay? Now, this is an image of the cell. This is fertilization. Now, what's remarkable about this is the egg will open up for maybe a millisecond and then close down. It opens for that millisecond, like the gate opens, right? To allow the sperm to enter. And then it closes back up to preserve the sanctity of the life that's being done inside of it. So again, it's showing the power of containment. Okay, Butch? Some of you know about Kinsakori. Kinsakori has to do with beauty in broken places. And what it's about is, if you see the gold marks right there, that's where the bowl was broken. I have one in my house somebody gave as a gift to me. It's when a piece of pottery breaks. This is done in ancient Japan. It's a story. We'll get into the story some other time, not today. But where they found a way to repair these. And where, whenever we break something, we put it back on the shelf and we turn it around so you don't see the cracks. They highlight the cracked spot to show the beauty in the broken spots. So it's a very, very powerful image. And this is where I think redemption comes, when you say, well, so all these traumas are terrible. It's not about terrible things. It's what we do with it. Elie Wiesel said, it's not the trauma, it's what you do with the trauma in your life. Can you make a life somehow? Can there be some resilience? Okay? The cracks where the light gets beautiful. It is. There's another image right here of the bowl. It's a great comment. The cracks are where the light gets in. Perfect. And Jung often says the place that we're most vulnerable is the place where we are most undeveloped, the inferior functions. Okay? And because that's not protected. Say you're a really good thinker. Well, the psyche is not going to come in through thinking because that's well developed and you know that world. It may come in through the feeling side, like the physicist Wolfgang Pauli. He was a raging intellect. Psyche came into him by virtue of the feeling function, through his relationship with different women he was involved in. That's where psyche came into his life, but he didn't know how to handle it too well. Okay, next image. We're just about at the end of the images. Okay, we're going to get, okay, another image of a container. Beautiful image of a container, and it's beautiful with the dirty hands, right? I mean, these are hands that are worked. Okay, Butch? Okay, we're going to show you the last two slides and then go back to presentation. This is from probably my favorite story of all times. It's the story of Philemon and Baucis. This couple that lived in the woods, and they had nothing. I mean, they had nothing in the outer world. And the gods came down on earth to see how their experiment of humanity was doing. And they came dressed as beggars, the gods, right? They knocked on doors, we're hungry, can you feed us? And everyone said, get out of here. You're filthy, you're dirty, you smell. And the gods grew weary they really lost hope that humanity was good. And they came to this couple. And the couple took them, of course, come in, share. We have some stone soup today. Come into the house. Everything we have, we'll share with you. Well, after a day or two, they said, we're the gods. That's wonderful. They said, we want to give you. You want a bigger house? No. You want more animals? No. What do you want? So we only want one thing. We pray for one thing, that we're never separated, even in death. And the gods granted their wish. So whenever you see two trees wrapped around each other or vines wrapped around each other, it's the image of Philemon and Baucis. That somehow something prevails in the human spirit. And I've just always been so moved by this story. Okay, so I think that's our last image we use for right now. And it's another picture of this. Thank you, Butch, very much. Thank you. Now, the next piece I want to get to is, what has humanity done with these troublesome internal contents? Okay, we know now enough images of barricading the door, locking the door. We know enough about Eric Neumann stuff of the old ethic. We project it out. So let's look for a minute at what humanity has done. We've always sought some kind of relief to expiate guilt and to find some relief. And since the beginning of time, we've done it. And we have four major pieces that we've used. One is we've had scapegoating. Remember scapegoating? Where you literally get the goat and you tie the sins onto the goat and tie it around the tail, and then you chase the goat out. And people felt it's a way to really rid the community of the evils, to rid the individual of it. The next one we had was something called the sin eaters. Some of you may not know that term. The sin eater was a person in a tribe who was responsible for absorbing the transgressions of the community. And interestingly enough, the sin eater always had to live on the outskirts of the village because their stain was too much for the community to absorb. So you go to them and say, I stole, I had an affair, I did something terrible, and the sin eater would, take it in, and they would then carry the stain for the other person. Mark that piece right there. The sin eater would carry the stain for the individual, and the individual then would go back and say, my God, I feel so free, I feel so much better. Like a great bath or a cleansing. The next one is the shamans. The shamans would often help people with the things that were bothering them. They find the content, they would take the content out and they would eat it. Many times the shaman would say, I'm going to eat that evil in you. I'm going to eat that bad energy. I'm going to eat that thing that stops you and makes you hesitate to move forward in life. And the next one is confession. And confession in many ways is part of the evolution of the sin eater. So in all ways, what we see in these different dynamics are individuals and humanity trying to come to grips with those contents that was inside of them, but was so difficult to find a home because they were riddled with either guilt or remorse or sadness or whatever. I got to get it out, like a bad meal. While I think it may have been some implicit, tremendous implicit value in these different approaches, it hasn't taken with humanity. So the question you got to ask is, have we co-opted these, what may be deeply spiritual, curative pieces, and have we co-opted them into the defensive structure of the human condition and thus lost the inherent meaning? That's a question, okay? Okay. Now let me read a piece about confession. It's part of the historical and theological roots of confession. The English word atone is derived from the phrase at one. To be at one with someone is to be in harmonious relationship with that person. Therefore, atonement is a process through which harmony is restored to that which was previously discordant. It is clear from the use of these words, kafar, in other words, that confession is an ongoing process. For example, there were the daily sin offerings through which the priest and the people made kafar for their sins. I'm not pronouncing the word right, I apologize. Then it goes on to say, because sin damages our relationship with God and neighbor, there is a natural call within us to heal what has been ruptured. Our method of cooperating with God's desire for us to atone for our sins and to return to him was achieved in the Old Covenant through the means of animal sacrifice. The sacrificial offering is what allowed us to remain wholly part of that community. Now, again, I'm not interested in the religious part, I'm interested in the symbol. So when we then went to animal sacrifices, similar to the scapegoat, it was the blood of the other that was shed for our atonement. That's a huge piece to consider. It was the blood of the other that was shed for our atonement. Now, in a really powerful book I mentioned before, the book with Elie Wiesel and Francois Mitterrand. Mitterrand asked a really powerful question in the book. He said, what would happen to humanity if there was no Redeemer? If there was nobody that died for our sins? I mean, the Christian story, myth, whatever, is that, God loves us so much, he died on the cross for our sins. Now, again, please understand, I'm not trying to take a Christian, Catholic, Jewish approach. I'm trying to understand how archetype is manifested in these religious traditions. Particularly, my theme here is, how do these religious traditions help us understand what we do with these discordant contents in the psyche? Okay? So we said, what would happen? I mean, think about it. What would happen if there was no idea that there was somebody that died for your sins and redeemed? Did that again get co-opted into the human psyche as a way to move further and further away from responsibility? Because look, what you find when you work with people that have been through terrible traumas, let's say as a perpetrator, and at some level, want to be honest again with ourselves, we've all perpetrated something in our life. Whether the parents that have been alcoholics, the parents that have been gamblers, the parents that were so involved in their own life, well, I can't go to the baseball game, I can't go to the dance recital because of this and that. And we hurt our kids with it. Take the extreme. And you know, I've worked with pretty severe trauma for 40 years. Take the extreme. How does a father live with the fact that he beats a kid's mother? How does a father live with the fact that he raped his daughter or beat his kids? How does a clergy, an analyst, a teacher, a professor, an instructor live with the fact that they have used their person sexually in other ways, their students? Even when it's seemingly consensual, it's not consensual. It's a massive abuse of power and ultimately becomes a rape in all these stories. The point. Narcissus looked in the waiting pool. He looked in the reflection pool to see who he was for the first time in his life. He never could see the truth of who he was. He didn't know. What happens with these serious archetypal transgressions against innate moral codes? You know what? That's a lot of the work of analytic therapy. It paves the way to allow for the release of the creative in the life. Because again, as I said earlier, the more the energy goes into repression, you're not going to be able to access this other level. I mean, look, Jung's whole call, the great theological, spiritual masters, their call was for integration. Whether you go to the mountain to pray, whether you go to make a sacrifice, you do your pilgrimage in the desert or in the mountains, whatever. It was an attempt to come to grips with whatever these discordant parts were in the psyche. What does Jung say about analysis? The first stage of analysis is dealing with what? The shadow. And I want to add a piece of this, and a lot of us in the community have been talking about this. In the early days of talking about shadow in the Jungian communities, they talked about Holocaust. They talked about the shadow of violence. They talked about the cloud that surrounded Europe in the 1930s and 40s. And yeah, the concept of shadow in many ways grew out of the reality that was Europe and the world back then. However, if you follow the progression, I would say maybe the de-evolution of the whole world of shadow in Jungian psychology, it's de-evolved to make it much more sanitized. And Sylvia gave me that word. It's a great word for it. It's been sanitized. Well, you're not pleasant enough. You're a little selfish. You know, you're not thoughtful enough. You know, oh, come on. When you have a chance to sit with somebody in the therapeutic relationship, close the doors, close the windows, and let somebody speak the truth about what their life is. And once they trust you, they may tell you things that they never told anybody else in their life. Things that they've held on to about what they've done, that they feel bad about, they feel guilty about. And you know what? Something as I was writing at my lecture, I realized that while there are so many wonderful virtues in the spiritual tradition, like confession, we don't seem to be able to access it, and nor does it seem to last for many people. Therapy, and I'm not trying to idealize, I don't idealize too much. Therapy in many ways carries the thread of where many of the spiritual traditions stopped. To have the opportunity to tell somebody something you've never told anybody in your life. Do you realize the enormity of that act, the liberation, and for the first time being able to take this piece that's been hiding 5 stories away from you in your house, to take it back in, the capacity of integration, that act of honest facing, like Narcissus in the pool, creates the potential for tremendous transformation in the psyche. Very difficult stuff. So this is one of the pieces. What happened? What happens if we did the piece? You mean you should start in a few seconds?
That's okay. I'm going to stop sharing. Hold on 1 second. David Arnold, please. Let's see. Hold on. Got it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
If that happens again, don't worry. I'll just take care of it.
Okay, I have to, I'm running out of time, so let me move to a conclusion here, okay?
Okay.
We can continue another time if you like, okay? So what happens to the migration, and Muriel gave me a great word added to this. I've had the migration of forgotten, to the migration and the mutation of forgotten contents. What happens to them? Okay, let's go back to the elders, Freud and Jung, right? Freud, we repeat what we don't want to remember. Right? Jung says what we do not face consciously comes back to us as fate. And you begin, and then when Freud added the return of the repressed, these contents that we continually try to get away from, it's like a boomerang effect. Okay? Now here's the other piece, and this will be close to my closing here. Why do these contents at the door, the wolves at the door, all these horrible images, zombies, vampires, why is it so terrifying? Neumann gave a brilliant, brilliant interpretation of it. He said there's suppression and there's repression. Suppression means I'm not going to drink anymore, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm not going to gamble. So the content, the thing is, it's conscious. I'm always thinking about it. You got the ring, right? Don't they give you like coins and all that? You got the coin. You hold on to that coin. I'm not going to drink anymore. Repression is the obliteration of the content. And he goes on to say, through the dynamics and processes of repression, that thing is pushed down so far and far and far. When it begins to surface, you don't recognize what it is because it's taken on monstrous proportions through the pressures of repression. And it makes perfect sense that all these horrible images at the gate, at the door, look so terrifying and are terrifying because they represent that which is exiled. Forget exiled to another country. So they're exiled to another domain, a spaceship, to another world. So when they come back, you don't know what the heck these things are anymore. So whether it's the guilt or the shame or whatever, or the contents of the desire for a new life, and as I say, in aging, we're called to live a different kind of life. We don't recognize it. Now, why zombies and vampires? I mean, how many movies today, Manon, about zombies and vampires? My mentor, Dr. Jürgen Kaufman, he said one of the most powerful images of the complex, most powerful symbols of the complex is a vampire, because it functioned under the cover of darkness, and it cannot take the light. It's absolutely brilliant. So again, what Kaufman says is a vampire represents that content, that dynamic in the psyche that works as a complex, that under the cover of darkness, in the unconscious dynamics, you do things you would never do if you were conscious. The complex comes out. The zombie, it's the living dead. How many times you say, will you let that thing die? Does it ever stop? Don't you ever stop with these kind of things? Can't you let it rest? No. And it's like, no, you can't let it rest because it's got an autonomous life of its own. So the zombie represents those complexes that just you can't seem to put at rest. You can't seem to, they die. They don't go away. And we find ourselves again and again and again and again in these replicative, iterative dynamics. So a lot of notes. In closing, see a lot of notes here about compassion, right? A colleague of mine is really wonderful about compassion. And she says, Mike, if we only have compassion for these troubling parts of our psyche, redemption comes from that. And it's true. to say, yeah, you know, you've had a compromised life because of certain things. Certain parts of your life are wonderful, certain parts are not so wonderful. Look what you've been through, saying to whomever it might be. Look what you've been through. And there are moments of grace. And if grace is something we can access, maybe it allows us to look in the mirror in a way that will allow us to finally see the truth with compassion. So yeah, this is where I am, and yeah, it makes sense. And I remember an image. I went onto the coast once in North Carolina. I took a vacation, and I saw these trees that were all bent over at the right angle. And I was fascinated by that. You know, I'm always taking my images. And I said, God, I wonder why standing right at the coast, right, like sentinels at the gate. I said, I wonder why it's right angles here. And I realized, oh my God, they weren't made to be right angles. They became that way as a result of the ongoing waves and the winds and the waves that would hit them every day. They captured, the design captured their environment. That design captured the pattern of their experience. They were bent over because that's what nature did to them in that environment. There's beauty in the broken places. Maybe it doesn't, the liquids don't flow as well because it's bent, got to go around in different angles, whatever. They still thrive, they're still beautiful. And it's the same with the psyche, that, you know, no matter what we go through, no matter what these traumas are, number one, if they're not faced, they're going to remain as terrifying things at the door. And you know what? We're going to be caught in, like the Sisyphus story, pushing it up and coming down, pushing it up and coming down, and we shackle to a Sisyphus-like experience if we don't face this stuff. And this is not like a great party, have a little sip of white wine, or how's it for you? I'm dealing with my this and my that. This is not that. This is something that's done pretty much in the privacy of a one-on-one conversation. You see some people talk about spiritual guidance and all that. Yeah, there's something profound about it. Again, being able to have somebody that you trust that much, you know they're not going to burn you. Now you hear the real Brooklyn coming out, right? You're not going to get burnt by this. That this person you trust that much to say, look, I got to tell you about something in my life that I never told anybody. And I'll leave you with one piece about grace, right? When my boy was about 8 years old, he was going to receive his first communion. 8 or 9, I think it was 8 or 9. And my father happened, I think he's on the call, my father. My father's gone 104 years old, by the way. And my father was visiting and said, yeah, my Christopher's going to confession today. I'm going to go too. He said, you're going, where are you going? I'm going to go to confession. He said, you're going to confession. How long has it been? I said, 30 years. He said, you better have a lot of money with you. You better pay that priest a lot of money if you haven't been there for 30 years. I said, okay, I'll pack my pocket up with a lot of $10 bills. Now, I didn't know that the tradition of confession had changed. Where when I grew up in the Catholic Church, you go in a little confessional, the dark booth, right? And they open the thing, the little gates. Well, now you sit face to face. And they see you. Now, I knew the priest because I was on committees with him. Anyway, as a kid, you say something, you say a sin to a priest, then they beat the hell out of you. So I go in, and this is my closing piece. I go in, and I think, I'm going to see him. Somebody I know. I said, maybe I'll disguise my voice. That's not going to work. So I go in, and I sit next to him and say, hi, Mike, how are you? So you think I'm Mike? I'm not Mike. Okay, I'm Michael. Then Mike, what is he? He said, well, Father, it's been 30 years since my last confession. I kind of like barricading the door from the wolves coming at me. You know what he said? And I'll never forget for as long as I live. How wonderful you're back. I said, that's what you say to me? You're not going to beat me up or nothing? You're not going to yell at me, condemn me to hell for 30 years? I don't have to pay you $100 for this? How wonderful you're back. That's another I'll end this on. And that's what makes those demons at the door very different. When we realize they can come in. And some things will hurt us, but the other things they're not going to do, they're not going to kill us. But you need somebody to help you with it. So look, to all my colleagues and friends that have made this happen. Butch, I know you've been up for hours and 5 this morning, and Dara for hours, and Sylvia, I know you put a lot of time in the wonderful introduction. I want to thank all of you, and Flora, who's given to me so much over the years. We're really family now. Flora Nava from Italy, and again to all of you that are suffering and struggling, and prayers and everything goes out to all of you. And let's hope this thing comes to an end. I want to visit you. I was supposed to come visit you in June. I can't right now because of this. So look, thank you everybody, and we're open. We have time for a few questions, I think, don't we?
Actually, let me just say a couple of things, okay? And one is, Michael, you had asked me to basically introduce you, and I think prophetically, I said that what you were going to provide for us is a truly soulful and deep and unflinching look at psyche. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to speak for the rest of the community, because I've been following the chats, and say to you with great gratitude for what you have presented. I know that everyone is sending thanks and everything, but I want to also give voice to the engagement of the community, to all of you who have sat and listened and written, even though we can't look at everything and Michael couldn't comment, is that the community has been with you, Michael, and following you and speaking for them. And so I want to, on their behalf, on our behalf, right, those of all of us in this tribe, in this community, those who are able to be here today and those who are going to be listening to this in a recording, how we are all a part, and we're tremendously grateful for you taking this on and being a leader. And one of the things that I did not say that I had meant to say is, you are a thought leader, Michael, and that is taking us into the future in ways we need to be led.
Thank you.
Because however we need to be looking at what you're presenting. And so we're just at time. I'm going to wonder if we do have any time for comments, because it's right at time. And there's also been requests for doing more. And to that I said, we don't know what or how, but we will be following up with this for those who are interested.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would love to do more. I thought about inviting some of my Italian colleagues in the presentation. Maybe have them be part of a panel we could do too at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So perhaps it's best to just end with the lecture. I don't know if you would like to hear some other comments. I'm certainly happy to make that happen.
Yeah, I think maybe we got a few minutes. I think we only have an hour and a half on the tape thing. So.
Right.
But no, I'm open.
Okay.
Do you want to? Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, there are lots of comments on the sidebar. So let's do a couple of minutes. If anyone has something that they would like to say, Butch, there's a way that people can raise their hands. And I don't remember how to do that. Or
it's
if
on the bottom somewhere. It's a little.
Yeah, I don't remember where. That you can raise your hand, and then I could unmute you. Or if you just put it on in participants. Okay, so hands in chat. Okay, so Shemi has a question. Go to participants. Okay.
Well, there's one thing somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So those of you who would like to actually say something, go on the participants and then click on raise hand. Okay, 3 participants raised hand. Thank you. It's just taking us a tiny bit to get this done. So please hang in there. Okay, so Linda is the first one that I see. And thanks for your patience, everyone, as we try to. Okay, Linda, I believe you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Also, if you're on a desktop, you go to participants, and if it doesn't say raise hands, you click on Alt and Y, and that will raise your hand for you. Okay, my question, Michael, thank you so much for this wonderful talk. Can you tie together now maybe I missed something important, and for which I apologize greatly if that's so. But can you tie together now what we're being asked to do in terms of distancing ourselves and staying in order to help keep our medical services and our hospitals from being overwhelmed, and the whole idea of needing to work on our own unconscious rather than projecting it out onto the scapegoats and other
Well,
needs
a
that we
couple of comments. One is I read the thing about spring break, and people that maybe not American maybe don't know what it is. Spring break is a time when all the college students go down to Florida. Like they take 1 week to go play. I mean, drink and play and all that stuff. And many of the students say, "I'm going down. I don't care if I get sick." Now, it's partly, I think, a response to your question, Linda, because it's a severely narcissistic response. I don't care if I get sick. Well, what about if you pass it on to other people? So there's a moral piece that comes with this. I mean, there are a lot of things we all want to do.
Hold on, I'll take care of it.
Okay. So anyway, Linda, that's number one in terms of a moral response to this, and it's more than just us in the thing. The other one is, I do think, and this was the theme, I see some people ask the question, how do I really connect this to the virus? It's the issue of knowing what we can protect against, but not globalizing the issue of extensive protection against internal contents as well. I think that's the lesson I take from this, okay? And somebody said, how do you really connect? That, for me, that's the stitching that holds us together. And I'm not trying to just co-op the co-op 19 thing. Like, I feel horrible. Again, my family and friends over there is suffering, especially. We all got it now. But I'm seeing where it does get co-opted is if it serves to reinforce all the ways we keep the stuff out there, we're going to get hurt. So, I think it stretches us because, look, what did the alchemists say? The alchemists said, what's above, so below, and what's internal, and all of that. The ancients knew about what they call the unus mundus, the one world, okay? We live in one world on some level. And to realize, yes, this is a world where we need to protect ourselves and sanitize and all that stuff. The same dynamics don't work in the psyche. And that's where, if you read the work of some of the people that have been doing this for many years, look, I hate to say, including Freud. Freud did some great stuff. His work on memory is brilliant. Memory and forgetting, repeating, remembering, forgetting, was brilliant. But the need to bring it home. And then when Neumann gives us a thing about why these images look so terrifying, is because we sanitize and push it away. So I think I take that as a great lesson as for me personally and for my practice and for students. That's what I'm really learning from this and what I'm taking away. The other piece is, with the time being home like this and whatever, I think we do have a chance to prioritize more. We're not out there going to shows or concerts or whatever and asking what is important. Like one of my rituals, some of you guys know, I have a 100-year-old wood cook stove, like in the old cowboy movies. I get that going every day, and I cook a pizza in 2-3 minutes. It's nuts. I make soups and breads, but it's healing. The point is healing. I go out into the woods and I get my kindling wood every day, whatever. It's healing, and it's what's important somehow. It's an important ritual of life that sustains me, that I'm doing more because I'm home all the time. I'm not going nowhere. Save a lot of gas money too in my car. But the rituals, you realize these are things that sustain something that nurtures my soul. I've loved these wood stoves for 30 years. It's even more important now than ever.
Michael, will you take a couple more questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Suzanne and Geraldine, would you, it seems as though you are sharing the computer sound. Could you undo that? I'm trying to make sure that everyone is muted. But please, Suzanne, I have unmuted you.
Okay. Thank you very much. This has been really wonderful. I'm resonating very much with what you're saying. I'm actually an Episcopal priest, and the whole notion of confession and finding ways to come back to that as a way of unblocking ourselves and returning to a sense of wholeness resonates with me a lot. I'm wondering, I know you were talking about therapy operating in a similar fashion. I'm wondering, for those of us who either don't have a spiritual community or a therapeutic relationship, what you might suggest as a way of unburdening.
Robert Langs, I mentioned him before. Robert Langs was a great psychoanalyst. He passed away about 3 years ago, and I studied with him for a long time. And one day he was giving a lecture in Italy about unconscious processing and dynamics and all. In two-part to respond to what you're asking. He said at one point, half in joke, half jesting, but half true. He said, look, he said, I'm a prophet. This is Robert Lang speaking, not me. He said, I'm a prophet. All the other prophets out there, they taught about love and eternal happiness and heaven and all. I said, I teach about death and unconscious dynamics. He said, I don't know why they want to stone me, and they loved all the other prophets. because he talked about this other side. But then somebody in the audience said, well, Dr. Lang, you teach so much wonderful stuff about how to understand unconscious dynamics. Where do you find a supervisor like this? No. He said, just be quiet and listen to your own communication. It's right there. If you learn to listen to the nature of the stories you talk about, you're going to find out what's really in your psyche. It's a different ear. So why did you tell a story about, you know what, my God, look at that poor cat. The poor cat's abandoned. It's on the street. Someone left that thing out to die out there. Oh my God. Or the beautiful story, the wait staff. Oh my God, I loved being with those people. I felt so attended to. Oh my God. When I was in Russia, Anastasia, she was so great. She took me to the different places and it translated. Oh my God, you felt like $1 million. Be cared for like that. Oh my God. The stories reveal what's in our psyche, but it takes for us to ask what's the nature of that story. Now, the last part of this. You know, we say every picture tells a story. I've turned that one around. Every story has a picture. To realize that every archetypal and personal story has attendant images that go with it. So whatever images, emotions in our own life that are coming up, you ask yourself, I wonder what story these are associated to. The story of the cat that's abandoned and left in the winter to die and perish. Or the story about that great restaurant or Anastasia showing me around Moscow with all that wonderful care and all. You know, it's coming from someplace. And remember, Jung said, for Freud, the dream was a railroad to the unconscious. He said, for Jung, he said, it's a complex that's a railroad. That thing that's making you a little wacky. Whether it's I can't get enough, I want to write. Like I love writing this up in my presentation. I love the research. You know, you give me a couple of days to be free, I'm dangerous. I get every book out. That's on my shelf. So that passion, that's going to divine madness for that. That's one place, see where your psyche wants you to go. The other side is you want to hit your head against a brick wall. So what the hell's going on, Mick? Why can't I stop this? Why can't I break? It's making me nuts. Why do I do this thing? Why do I make these choices? Because they're not choices. They're not choices you make sometimes. It's the complex choosing for you. It's a possession choosing. So it deserves much more of an observing ego that observes and is interested in the metaphors and the stories to help you understand what story is being told by these events. So,
how many more questions would you like? And thank you so much, Suzanne. Couple more, Michael?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so
Bill? The guy who 2 cups of espresso. I'm good all day now. So.
Well, so Bill, William Bishop.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Here I am. I can't run across Michael without disturbing at least one question. Can't hear me?
It's all muted. Kind of muted.
I'm still muted?
No, you are not muted. It's that your sound is not coming through. So if you will maybe come closer to the computer, and if not, yeah.
Yeah, you can hear? Michael can't hear.
And try it. It's William Bishop.
Bill. Okay, Bill, I know Bill for many years. Try again, Bill.
Can you hear me, Michael?
Yeah, now it's better.
Okay. All right. First, I love you. The number one. Number two is, I can't go without crossing Michael's path without asking at least one disturbing question. So here's my question. I want to ask you if you agree with this, that when contents return, they also return with a method that's different than yours.
Okay, again, so it's getting a little muffled. When content returns, what?
It returns with a method that's different than your characteristic method.
It
So help me with
returns
the last
with a
part of
different
that.
method.
The last one I'm not catching. It's different from, I got up to that point.
Your habitual method.
Got it, okay. That you believe the message to be, you mean? That you think it is?
METHOD.
A method.
Yeah, it has a different way of doing things.
Can you give me a little picture, Bill? I mean, I love to respond. I want to make sure I understand your question to respond.
Let's see. Would it help if I typed it?
No. I'm hearing you. We hear you, okay. But can you give it a little piece of what? Say it a little differently. Give me a little example of what you mean.
I once picked up my nephew, right, and gave him like the good uncle talk. And by the time I got him to my house, he was in a major depression, right? So I went to sleep that night with the idea that my dream would tell me how to relate to him. And when I woke up, I had a completely different way of relating to him. I realized he knows everything about right and wrong. He didn't need my lecture. He needed somebody to be on his side while he practiced that in the real world.
Got it.
So it changed my method. You see what I mean?
I got it.
Yeah.
I'm going to mute you now, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Look, I think it's easy for a lot of the clinicians to have hubris, you know, that we buy the package, we know what to do, whatever. And I mean, you know, Jung always said, I don't agree with this part, but Jung said you should never really have any prior conceptions about a case, whatever, let it all evolve new. And that partially that's true. But there are times that things happen, especially perturbation in treatment, but especially when something kind of goes wrong, whatever, you realize psyche is moving in a really strange way, like a trickster figure, to shake the therapist up in their approach. And I've seen this on numerous occasions, that the way I was treating somebody was really off. And I can't think of an example right now, but it's a great observation. Yeah. Remember, look, I think one way to talk about it theoretically is that there's a diphasic nature to the unconscious, right? You got conscious and unconscious. They're two totally different systems, different informational bases. They two different approaches to life. What we look at consciously is often diametrically opposed by the unconscious. And what you want to do is anytime you make an intervention, say with a therapy, with our kids or whatever, you want to evaluate by what comes from the unconscious. I'll give you an example. Okay, got it. Years ago, when my son was about 15 years old, 14, 15 years old, we got into a real razz. You know what it's like? You clean the room. Will you please clean the room? Oh yeah, I'll clean it. Ma e quando? E domani? E quando? When? Tomorrow. Christopher, it's been 4 tomorrows. The room is still filthy. I'm getting upset here. Clean the damn room. Oh, I'll get to it. I said, if it's not done by tomorrow, I'm going to be really annoyed. And so I'm going out shopping. When I come back, I really want that room cleaned up or else we get trouble. Before you judge me, bear with me before you hate me. Anyway, I go shopping. I'm thinking, I want to come back. I don't want to see that. I want to see the house still dirty. I want his room still dirty because I'm ready. I'm ready for the fight. I come home. Chris, he's nowhere to be found. Chris, and I find on my computer screen, he's left me a note. Dad, we're at a bad place together. I'm leaving. He got on his bike and he left, right? And it was a Fellini movie. Storming out, hail, rain, and he's on his bicycle. And I feel horrible. Oh my God, what did I do to my kid? And all of a sudden, when I read the note, the spell broke. The spell broke in me. You know what I mean? But when I was wrapped up, I was wrapped around. I wanted a war. And I realized, my God, there's something else at work, like you're saying, Bill. And I realized he needed more separation from me, and I was fighting it. I still wanted to treat him like a younger boy. And the fight, and I realized now, and I got your point now, Bill, the argument and the kind of war we had was really the self's way of creating distance. I said, Chris, I finally got him. I'm calling everybody. I'm riding all over like a maniac. And I finally got him and said, Chris, please come home. I'm sorry. I got your favorite root beer. And he said, I got you something too, Daddy. I got your favorite album. I bought you an album. I said, so we come home, and like the movie scene, you know, you kind of slow motion, you're running towards each other, and you're going to hug each other and kiss, and oh, God, we're crying. And I say, Chris, I think I have a sense what happened. You're 15 years old, 14, whatever. You're going to be driving another 6 months or a year. I've still been treating you like you're a younger kid. You need more distance. You know, I need to give you a little more freedom. Of course, with the containment around it, with the citadel around it. I said, but I think I've been hurting you by keeping you a little too close, a little too confined. And you know what? It was so healing. So it was healing what happened. And we both got it. So that was one of those moments where the self came in a pretty aggressive way because I couldn't catch it, but it created the distance. But then we made it conscious. That was one of the fortunate ones where we finally caught it. You know, a little bit late, but we got it. Maybe one more, and then we'll stop.
Okay, so Deborah Pfeffer. I'm sorry, I think that's.
Yeah.
Sorry, is that?
Muted.
Hold on, it takes a second. Please, Deborah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say something about synchronicity of the wolf. Michael, when you said you actually had a wolf in your yard today?
Twice, 3 times the size of anyone I've ever seen in my life.
Well, this morning I made two collages, one for the virus itself and one for protection for myself from the virus.
Wow.
So I realized that no one, probably only a few people can see this, but I'm going to hold it up. This is the card I made for the virus.
Oh my God.
Which is similar to a dream I had that brought me to my knees probably 15 years ago. So that's the virus itself. It has a spiral at the center,
Wow.
which is gold, and the egg. But here's the synchronicity. My protector is turned away from a dark city on a hill and turned toward the light. You mentioned we have to adjust our orientation. And the person is holding, if you can see the grayness in the arms of the person, is a wolf.
Oh my God.
And it's the embrace of the wolf and the light turning toward the light. I just made this morning.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
But I do keep a synchronicity journal as well as a dream journal because they abound with me. But we're in the right place doing the right thing is what I think.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was the size of a big German Shepherd. They usually get little foxes, something here. This is incredible. So,
thank you. Michael, Juliana, I think would like to say something.
Yes, if I could. Do you hear me?
Yes.
No, just wanted to share something really quick. 2 weeks ago, I had this dream around the coronavirus. I had a dream where there was a kind of third war, but it was a silent one. And there were people in the streets and didn't have any place to go because they were so away from their homes. So they needed to use my house to protect themselves. And my mom accidentally left the door open. And I was like yelling at her, close the door, but it was too late because they were already inside our house. And I felt so invaded. And for me, it's just an interpretation. For me, it's how we allow sometimes the collective to get inside our psyches and place their their own thoughts, feelings, fears, panic, insecurity inside of us. Just wanted to share, and if you have any suggestions about that dream. Thank you.
I think the way you go about the issue of protection and what's in and out is the theme of the dream. And I think in respect of the dream, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to leave it as your dream to keep it protected in your world. I don't want to make it public for the group, but it's powerful. Whatever issues of protection and entry and protection are major archetypal issues. You know, there's a big thing that's up. So, and let me also go back, Deborah. They are fantastic images that you gave us. Very, very powerful images. So, and look, Juliana, it's out of respect. I don't want to do. When we do dream programs, I always say, you know what? I know a lot of dream therapists. They do all the work in public and all that. There's too much we can know. But again, the theme is so relevant to today, but open spaces and closed spaces. So maybe one more, then we'll stop.
Yeah, that's all. One more. And Neil, I'm going to unmute you. And thank you. There you go.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm out here in Seattle, so we've been, definitely grinding things to a halt for large numbers of people are being very much a lot less active socially, which is very much a reversal for the kind of character of this city. And someone before mentioned the word enantiodromia in the chat. So it seems like we're experiencing, as a lot of people around the world are, a kind of reversal of libido or energy. And I was wondering, in that case where mass cultures or large groups of people become redirected, where there is that enantiodromia, and it's one that directs the individuals towards obviously much more confinement, isolation, and even compression. How does one, or how do people become more willing to encounter the unconscious in that kind of a crucible, in that kind of an incubator? Because my gut feeling, and the astrologers that I kind of hang with, we can all see this in the astrological chart, but how does one become more willing to become engaged with the unconscious as it may appear in this kind of a dynamic? Because it's happening, what I see and what all the astrologers are seeing, it's happening on a very, very large scale. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's powerful. Okay, let me begin with the clinical situation first, okay? Often in the beginning of analysis, a patient will have a dream. Let's say two examples, okay? Say patient number one dreams of being in the middle of the ocean with a rowboat. Number two, they're in the middle of the ocean with an ocean liner. Not today, because ocean liners and the virus, it's not a good thing to be, but just imagine different times. In the first one, with somebody in a rowboat or a little boat in the middle of the ocean, really way out in the middle, you say that they don't have enough of a psychological structure to handle unconscious dynamics. The ego is too frail. So the work of the therapy would be to build up the ego at that point. The other one is we're ready to go. It's an ocean liner. It's big. It's good. It's going to be able to handle the waves and all this stuff. It's made for the big waters. So if we have the second one, then you already begin to have your orientation that this will be an experience, whether it's analysis or whomever you're working with, that we can access the contents. Okay. Now, next level. What are the contents? See, that's a lot of the work I'm interested in. That's a whole other part of this talk. What are these contents? When we realize the human proclivity to sanitize, and we're aware of that, right? And we say, okay, we know that's there, the great stuff, the wonderful stuff, and all that. Where's the shadow stuff? Where's the shadow stuff? And then let me give that one quote by Jung. Where is it now? Bear with me just 1 second. Okay, fine. Anyway, where Jung says, I wrote it in the description for this talk, that the contents have been just exploding from the unconscious, the eruptions, okay? If you realize that the unconscious has all the issues of trauma, repression, and all that's part of what comes up, as well as the forward-moving, creative, and all that, they all weave together, woven together, they're all woven together. But I think sometimes people, I'm not saying you, but some people have I think more of a lighthearted attitude to the unconscious. When you sit and you hear, like the question I forget who asked before about the unconscious, the woman who's the Episcopal priest about the unconscious, when you start hearing these stories, like the cat that's left out in the winter, you say, okay, is that just my inner cat? But when you realize that the unconscious will often use these images to tell a very difficult story about a real part of your life, not only the anima and all that, which is part of it. I mean, Jung, von Franz did the whole book on the archetype of the cat. We got that. But often it's also revealing a huge trauma in your life. So the minute you open that door, be prepared. And have an awareness that there are these different levels of experiences that will emerge through these images. And you see what happened in many ways. I officially trained as a Jungian psychoanalyst, and I was privately trained in the Freudian field too. So I have both pedigrees, okay? Not formally a Freudian. But the Freudians, they're much more oriented towards the darker aspect. For them, the unconscious was the cauldron of seething desires and all this stuff. It's a little too dark. The Jungian is the opposite many times. Jung wasn't. Jung had it. Von Franz had the depth. They had all that stuff as part of it. When Jung talked about the eruptions from this unconscious, of these powerful unconscious content that could result in the things that had gone on in Europe in the 1930s and 40s, he didn't shy away from it. We've been, again, Sylvia's word, she gave it to me, I cite you every time. We sanitize that stuff. So when you're engaged with somebody dealing with the unconscious, be prepared of what you're opening. And you want to look, are we in a little rowboat in the middle of the ocean? Or I have a 19-foot boat. My 19-foot boat in the middle of the ocean? I hope to God not. Or an ocean liner. And the person that's steering, do they know what the heck they're doing or not? You know. So it's a great question, but it takes a lot of discernment. But again, going back to the woman who's the priest, it's a very important question. To learn to listen to the voice of psyche. And we're doing that seminar right now. If anybody interested, we're doing that seminar in 3 languages right now. We're doing this, the voice of psyche, in English on Monday nights, Spanish, the voice of psyche, on Thursday nights, and in Russia, the voice of psyche on Thursday afternoons. 3 countries, 3 languages. It's all about learning to listen to that voice. How do you understand what it's saying? Understand a term called psychic representation, which is huge. How does psyche represent a wonderful initiative? Oh my God, paved with gold, right? We know some things like that, right? When you're involved in something, it looks fantastic, a wonderful prospect. You'll go after that. Or ones they say, man, that's a road paved to hell, man. It's not a good one for you. Get the heck out of there right now. It's not good for you. And you learn that there are images that capture the benevolent and the forward-moving and the really generative. And there are images that begin to capture we're back where we were a long time ago, man. We're not learning. You can learn from repetition, but do you really want to reinvest so much in that one? So, okay.
Wonderful. So thank you. Thank you, Michael, for, whoa, I think maybe the espresso, huh? Great. And just for those of you who are still on, thank you for your heartfelt engagement and participation, and know that the recording is going to be on the Assisi website. I think that Butch has put it on the chat bar before, but go back to it. It probably won't be on there until Monday, and then feel free to share it. It'll also be on the Assisi Facebook page and the student page. And I think on behalf of the entire board of directors again, and Michael, please, thank you so much, and stay well.
And do contact the institute if you're interested in some of the work we have with the programs and all that. I mean, I don't want to talk about all that because it's not the nature of this today, but there's a lot of things we're doing with training programs, so do contact us. Thank you so much.
Gracias a todos. Thank you. And das vidanya, that's in Russian, it says bye-bye. And I don't know how to say be well, but from all of us at the Assisi Institute, thank you again. And please stay healthy and well. And we will do something. We just don't know what yet. Right, Michael?
Yeah. We'll talk.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Peter, we're right in your living room there. Bye-bye.